Morning, Greg.
Good morning, Guy.
Very nice to see you. Thank you. Greg, I know you as a Microsoft Teams Rooms guru or expert. But that's because I only came into the industry fairly recently in the last few years. You actually have a career in which you've acquired some expertise which you bring to consulting about Microsoft Teams Rooms. What was that career before Microsoft Teams Rooms, and what did it give you?
Yeah, well, it was quite a circuitous path, I have to say. Like a lot of people in the AV industry, I'm a failed musician. I studied music and did that for a couple of years, and then worked out that was never going to be enough to pay the rent in any kind of serious manner. And I just came into AV by accident. But the thing is, I've always had an interest in projection, in displays, and latterly in lighting. And I think the real background to this, to the relevance to your question, is that I did some consultancy for this Japanese-owned Danish company, DNP, who I still work with this day. They're part of this massive Japanese conglomerate, Dai Nippon Printing. And because I had a bit of, I had some background in optical design, in marketing, they employed me as a consultant, and they used the UK as a sort of a guinea pig to roll out what was then rear projection screens, high quality rear projection screens. And so the thing is that we were selling or trying to sell these screens that literally cost 4 times the price of any other screen on the market at the time. Yeah. And you put them next to each other, and there was a very clear difference, and we had a massive success with it, and that's what got DNP going pretty much globally with the whole screens market, or professional screens market. And I just wanted to put some numbers on why is this screen better than that one, and that's what got me going. And then from that, I then got to work with a massively talented team of engineers at the DNP factory outside Copenhagen, and began to get involved with not writing standards but best practices. And also around that time, I was asked to write a module on a postgrad degree for what was then UMIST, and now is the University of Manchester, on projected displays in buildings. Right. And then I kind of realised that for what I wanted or what I needed, although there were standards for the components of what I was doing for projectors and for screens and so on, there was nothing about the finished result. And that was really the beginning of it. And doing that research and writing that module for Professor Livermore, that really got me going. Then I got involved with Infocom and then AVIXA. And I got invited to join their best practice group, because I was told very firmly that Infocom would never be a standards organisation. Oh, right. Okay. And 2 years later, they were a standards organisation. They became a ANSI accredited standards development organisation, and I joined that happy crew. And then out of a best practice paper that I'd already co-written with some colleagues. We used that as the basis for one of the first standards we did, which was PISCAR, the Projected Image System Contrast Ratio, and really, Guy, it was downhill all the way from there.
You've changed that standard recently as well. You've given it a new name or expanded it.
Yeah, we've rewritten it, repurposed it, because it was, as the name implies, just about projection, and now we just cut the P, because we've repurposed it so it applies to displays across the board. Doesn't matter what technology it is. And it was that was a very happy experience. Working with some of my friends at Google and other people to see that the work, the task group work that we'd done to start with had stood the test of time, but we're able to add to it, and I learnt an awful lot on that. There are a lot of very smart people on that group, particularly James Fife, I remember, who was then a consultant, but then moved over to work for RP Visuals. So it's that kind of thing that's led me to the Microsoft Teams room space. Sure. As we've said in the past, I've had a real kind of feeling of all roads lead to Rome about this, because I also consult in lighting and so forth, and having and really working in a holistic approach to room design, meeting room design, and higher education, teaching space design. When the pandemic started, and I was trying to work out what bloody hell I was going to be doing, at that point onwards, then got began to do these webinars and so forth, and people were at that point then massively moving to hybrid spaces, and it was you talk to the consultants and some of the leading integrators. In a way, it was a kind of a functioning car crash in a way, because basically what people needed to do was to get the functionality of the hybrid spaces there, sure. Because it was emergency stations, and they had to do it in. And that was the plus side, and a lot of incredible ingenuity and so forth was done to make it happen. But of course, it threw the baby out with the bathwater. Then even the most basic compliance with standards, went out the window. And at the front end of the pandemic, we're all talking about Zoom rooms and Zoom calls. Sure. And then gradually there became Teams rooms, and Teams rooms became the campfire around which these conversations happen. I obviously, Teams rooms are a massive focus for me now. Sure. Which is sort of effectively a kind of a user or a market driven thing, but really it's speaking to the principles of hybrid meeting and teaching space design. The reason I think that Microsoft have been so powerful in this space is that they've actually addressed the issue of room design.
So they've done that unusual thing of they have the lab, they have the documents, that they've put their thoughts down.
Yeah, they've actually engaged with what it involves to have a good user experience, and that's out with the room hardware. And they've got this amazing space on one of their Seattle campuses, the Hive, this famous Hive, and they've just got guys and women there, with jigsaws and hacksaws and gaffer tape, and they just think of something and they make it happen. So they have this very, they're kind of living the high tech, mission of fail fast, experiment and move quickly and fail fast, and they've developed some really good spaces, but it's very unusual for a company like Microsoft to do that. But unlike the early days of the internet, when Netscape was regarded as their enemy, for Microsoft to succeed now, it's all about interoperability, and so they've got a vested interest in actually engaging with the big wide world, because that just expands their market. But they've had a tremendous impact, I think, on awareness about room design, and that's really what's brought me to this space now.
So that's what got you here, and in terms of your background, and then Microsoft's unusual role in the market. In terms of what you're doing at this show, you're actually here on a stand. You're actually demoing.
Yeah, look. Yes, so. It's all been part of the same process. I've been engaging with the Microsoft team about the display side, and of course, Epson, the massive company, they've been working.
So just for anyone who doesn't know, you're on the Epson stand. There's an Epson 10,000 lumens 4K projector and a DNP stand which is
Yeah.
very black, before you put anything on it.
Well done. Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
that's it.
I've
So
done a little bit of prep for
you
this.
said you tick that box.
Right.
So Epson had been dealing with Microsoft in the development of the spaces that they were doing, and one of the hot new things as part of the whole Microsoft Teams room is this new front row, which is a screen layout, but it has a different aspect ratio. It has a 21:9 aspect ratio. Having been through a few iterations of 32:9 and so forth, Microsoft have settled in on that.
Well, it's interesting that their own demo rooms in the Hive have that Epson projector, Panacast, Jabra Panacast 50, and they're using projection. But we've spoken before. You're demoing with a very successful projection company. But not everyone believes or understands that projection can be done well for front row. So what do you say to them when they?
Well, it's funny because we've had various versions of that conversation, in the day and a half that we've had so far, and really, I think the thing is had projection not existed and it was being launched at the show as a new technology, people would be knocked out with it. But preconditions have changed because I think firstly the move to laser or laser phosphor technology, so you get 20,000 hours of maintenance-free life. You've got the maintenance software so that you can monitor the kit in the same way that you can a panel. But what's brought us to the situation where Epson asked me to design this area for them, or my team to design this area for them, is that effectively for projection to work well, the whole process has got to be flipped round 180 degrees. Well, traditionally people would go, oh, you need a 8,000, they go like this, oh, you need a 6,000 or 8,000 lumen projector in this space. And that's exactly the wrong way around.
So they're speccing the projector before they're speccing the screen?
Yeah. And it misses the basic point. People don't look at projectors, they look at the screens. Right. So the actual process, using AVIXA standards, he said, is that you start by describing what the user experience needs to be in hard metrics. You need so many candela per square meter, such a contrast ratio, and then you use AVIXA standards to work out what the image size should be, and then depending on the application, you then choose the screen material, and then from that you use standards-based calculators to decide what projector specification is needed, and that's really why. This what we're showing on the Epson booth has been so transformative for people's expectations about projection, because we've done it that way round. And as you correctly say, in these circumstances you cannot use a conventional screen material because the screen needs to be black until projected light hits it, and this DNP supernova technology that we're using as part of the solution ticks those boxes. But it's a very different and novel experience for me. Always worked in a sort of small specialist business environment to be working with the big cheeses at Epson. But it's a nice experience.
I was there yesterday and I couldn't actually get to you. I didn't have a booked appointment or anything. Well, I did with Epson, and I walked past and I saw you busy.
It's a really lovely thing because I've done this show ever since it started, since it was sort of in that echoing barn in Geneva about 150 years ago, whenever it was, and seeing it track all the way through. But Epson have got this, they've got the heft, they've got the booth, or our bit of the booth is right on the main aisle, and it was if you're going to write a scenario for an ideal situation to show something off, I'm just in a very privileged position to be there.
One thing I think of when I think of projection, when I was at Infocom last year, I looked at an Epson 21:9, and I think that was in a dark room. Do you need to do this projection in a dark room, or can you do it with natural daylight?
No, that is that's exactly the point about what we're doing here. We're under the spotlights of the show, and that has been the issue. to complete the proposition of making these displays work, because Microsoft has made the move to using projection for Microsoft Teams rooms and for front row and those layouts. But the thing is that using a conventional screen material, a non-optical material as we'd call it, you can only do it under massively controlled lighting conditions, and so that's been the second path, the second iteration, and which has led us to here. So the timing is really perfect to be showing this at ISC.
So in one, you're showing the projection of today, that what can be done. So earlier on, you described the beginning of the pandemic, and you said basically it was a car crash in terms of what went into rooms in the rush to get things right. You're doing some consulting now. Do you see, have we made progress? Are there improvements that you can see taking place?
Well, definitely. I think, and I think actually there are improvements in really in this sort of 360-degree area, because I work in room design, room configuration, and so effectively, what I'm involved with is getting the preconditions right before you put any equipment in the room. And I'm seeing that there's a fantastic awareness amongst the end user community. I work a lot with the AV user group, the group that my friend Owen Ellis runs, and the consultants group, and the learning and teaching spaces management group, and SCOMS. There's much more awareness of what they need, and I think and then the integrators, the leading integrators, their pre-sales, their pre-sales teams have really shown a lot of commitment to improving the way these spaces are executed.
So you've got some improvement. What's the thing that people are still missing the most when you go in? What's the thing that people are most likely not to have really fully covered off? So,
well, I think the top two things on that list, because there are many-fold ways for people to shoot themselves in the foot in this area, but I think the real thing is about the two things are, firstly, the room configuration. You can't sidestep having to have the room designed well and that thought through. But I think the other thing that has been particularly missing, but this show is going to be absolutely fantastic to help people make steps forward, and that has been in thinking about the remote viewer's experience of the space that you create. Right. There's very natural focus on making the room that you're in, that you're designing, fantastic for the users in there. But so often people forget how important it is on the other side of the of the fourth wall, if you like, that the experience is good, and that's been a particular focus for me. But there are some very exciting developments there with camera technology, and a nice thing I think is that because you've got the situation where the cameras themselves are good enough, where you've got good lenses, good sensors, 6K sensors, and obviously that'll just get bigger and better as they go along. But this much trumpeted AI, so that they're able to do digital zoom and moving around.
So AI is the director of the movie.
Yeah, it's the director of the movie. But the thing is that can just continuously improve. That the sensor can stay there, and you can download the firmware or process on the cloud, whatever it is. And I think that will, that's something that will definitely be, I think, one of the key things to watch out for. And you'll see development in not just the in the technology and all the brands that are launching things, but in the way that they're used and the imagination and courage, I think, to use them in different ways.
So I clearly understand what's going on with people needing to think it through from the remote viewer's point of view. You said there are still some issues around room configuration. What does that mean in practice?
Well, the table layout. People would like to use rectangular tables for historic reasons. But if you're going to face effectively outside the room, then you have to move to a tapered or a semicircular table.
Right.
Pattern. Room lighting, that's usually or quite often, unfortunately, a massive fail. That also speaks to the kind of historical issues that impact us when we're doing these spaces, because it's I'm not being critical of the industry, because the problem with organisations is that they're so heavily siloed, and you can have and so it's facilities management or building management that will often control the lighting, which can actually destroy the user experience in all kinds of ways.
So what do you do? You either have a conversation with facilities management, or is there any way that you can, if you can't, is there any way that you can rectify it or get around something that you can't change?
Well, I mean, the thing is that you can't kick against the pricks, if you like. You've got to accept what the situation is. I mean, one of my clients, he calls me his translator, because I'm able to communicate in the language that they understand with architects and lighting designers and facilities management, and that's because that's a perennial problem. The answer to that, the answer to that is very complex, and honestly, it's as much as being a politician and a communicator as much as anything else when you're having those conversations. And that's, if you like, where my experience of working with very disparate groups of people on the board at Infocom, I feel that experience coming back to me when I'm
so it's
negotiating.
not just your experience in developing standards, but your experience in committee, in working as part of a committee. I think that's a good way of putting it, because I've done all sorts of things over my career, but I think the thing that definitely gave me the most pleasure was when I was volunteering, at a high level at Infocom when I was on the board, and the thing that I loved about it was it just gave me the ability to work with a whole bunch of smart, nice people from all sorts of different backgrounds and cultures, and and also in some of the committees there were quite warring factions and so forth, and to have the ability to chair and lead committees where that happened, that was all part of the mix. So that's something I actually really enjoy in my work in general, is the communication part of it. I enjoy my writing. I enjoy meeting and talking about what I do, but at a practical level, the real thing I think that will make or can make a big difference to this issue of how you address the structural issues in organisations, so that you can look at a room design in a holistic way. I think the well building standard is something that I'm paying particular attention to in 2023. I've heard about that. Other people have mentioned its importance.
Yeah. So the well building standard, it's now come out with version 2, which makes it even more applicable. There are lots of really nice things about it, which make things point in the right direction, if you like. First of all, what they've done by and large is to collate existing environmental and building standards and lighting standards and put it into one wrapper.
Yeah.
In a holistic way. I keep using that word holistic, but it's very important. Secondly, some of the standards that they have effectively sort of overlap with the AVIXA standards. So that gives you traction, that gives you kind of a linking key for it. But the other thing is that there's a lot of interest in well buildings and making sure people's health and well-being within the built environment is good. But the real thing is that the architects get, there's a scoring system, and the architects can get additional brownie points from the AV professionals.
Right.
So the AV professionals, instead of being traditionally the enemy or possibly the enemy as they have been regarded in the past, the AV professionals can actually help the architects get even higher room scores.
Sure.
But in the end, as Randy Lemke, who used to be the CEO of Infocom, his big saying was "Show me the money, show me the money." And the thing is that it's just cheaper to get a building right the first time than to have its running costs lower if you spec the right thing. And the well building standard is not a magic wand, but it's definitely a fantastic tool that can be used to deal with the bigger structural issues that we face in Teams rooms and hybrid workspaces.
Okay. So now I think the final area of interest would be what's going to happen in the immediate future in terms of these hybrid meeting and teaching places. So I'm aware of a couple of things. I think you've already mentioned doing amazing things with cameras, and then there's the question of, well, can we make the sound appear to come from where the remote person is on the screen? So let's start with the sound, because I think what would you have to say there?
Well, I think that is very much a watch this space thing. Microsoft have effectively said we want spatial audio, and make it so. I think it's quite interesting, isn't it? You've just publicised it. QSIS have come out with something which has been done in conjunction with Microsoft. I think that as a lot of people will tell you, the A seems to be very much the junior relation in AV, and the attention on acoustics and audio often goes way down the food chain. Do
you think it will come in at the high end then?
Well, when all's said and done, the video can fail, but the audio has to be there.
Right.
And I think that is understood. It's a complicated thing to unlock, because people. The downside about technology is people think it can solve all of the problems. And it's all very well if you've got fantastic audio equipment with which you can adjust to the room, but if it's fighting against dreadful acoustics, a room with glass all down one side and a square shape and reflective walls, it still detracts from the experience. I think that.
So get the room right before you even think about directional.
Well, that's my riff, and you're used to that. But I think the thing is, directional audio will just to get to the point of having stereo, and then having the standard so that you can have interoperability between the different platforms and vendors that are out there. That would be a massive step. It's not my area expertise. There are people out there like Harold Steindl in Austria who writes very powerfully about that, and he's very, very, very knowledgeable. But it's the fancy word for this is disaggregation. It's breaking the proposition of the space down into all the component elements. But audio is just so important. It is the fundamental. I've got clients who just say, well, the video, if the video fails, well, it fails. But one thing we can't lose is the audio. Yeah.
And what are you most excited, or what do you think would be the most interesting thing coming next? Is it going to be AI? Is it going to be intelligent cameras? Is it going to be?
For me, the jury's out for that, because I've got a background in simulation, which is where a lot of the sort of the higher level projection and lighting awarenesses come from. And in projection, we think in terms of cues. What does it take for someone to get to the point where they suspend their disbelief and they engage with the experience, which, if you like, is the sort of the hybrid, holy grail. So I think that the thing that I'm most excited to see is getting to that point, really.
Okay. All right, Greg. Well, thank you very much for joining us here. It was a pleasure to see you on the booth in passing yesterday.
Lovely to see you, Guy. Thank you for asking me.
Cheers. You're welcome.